going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Sharing the Mic with JJ. Okay, this week we have an awesome guest on. All right, let me tell you a little bit about this guy. All right, so first of all, he is one of the hosts of the Heart of the Sports radio show with Jeff Cohen on 860 WWDB AM. He does an awesome job. Also, the founder and the owner of JRS Strategies. He's an incredible person. Jason Springer, what's going on? How you doing?
I hope I can live up to that introduction at this point. My goodness, how you doing, JJ?
I'm doing pretty good. I have to tell the listeners out there. I have to tell the listeners out there this whole story because when I graduated from high school, all right. So I was a part of a special needs basketball organization called the Ahad Squadron, and I participate and I still give back to them. To this day, and I'm actually gonna be getting them on sometime in October. So that'll be like really, really cool to just get other people to come on here and just to get stuff from the athlete's perspective. I think that would be really cool. But I was of course, like I had a really good connection and a really good relationship with Jeff Rupberg. Leah, Jeff, and Robin, everybody in that family, love them all so much. And Jeff like wanted me to come on to the Heart of Sports because you guys started. I think that was the year that you guys started in 2016. I believe that was it.
It was. It amazes me. I've been doing a radio show for this long now.
Oh, that's so crazy. But I came on and that was my first radio experience. That was my first time I was ever like on the radio, and it was in Cherry Hill. And Coach and I came. My parents were right there too, and we were on 610 ESPN, and that was just such a cool experience getting to meet you, getting to see Jeff do his thing, and also Ryan, in the back, like doing all the audio mixing and all that sort of stuff. Man, that was so awesome. So I just have to say thank you so much for just like really just letting me figure out like that this is what I really wanted to do. And I don't think I even like would have imagined that I'd be doing this now to this day because I love being on the air and I love being able to talk to people. And it just really amazes me that, looking back on that experience, it's just led me
That
to what I'm doing now.
that's awesome. The show's a blast, and the idea behind the show. I'm a storyteller at heart,
Yep.
and originally doing the show with Jeff Rupberg and Ryan Strauss, and now with Jeff Cohen. The idea was that there's a story behind the sport. There's people that are impacted by sports. There's lessons that are learned. There's platforms that are used. And we were getting this platform to talk sports. And look, I'll talk balls and strikes or the game last night with the best of them all day long. That's what I've grown up doing. I used to lie about my age to call into the sports radio shows because I wasn't old enough. It just, and so, it gives everybody an opportunity to come together. You don't have to be the same to root for the same team. And that was kind of the idea behind the Heart of Sports, the story behind the games. And so you were coming in at the time to talk about the opportunity with playing basketball and what it meant to you. And that's what it's about. It's about the lessons that you learn playing, the opportunities that you get that you then take forward, whether it's, coming in studio or doing other things or meeting other people. That's what it's all about to me.
Absolutely. And look, we are going to dive more into storytelling because that is what this whole medium is all about. But before we get into things, okay, I know that Sunday is a big day. Okay.
Yeah.
I've been waiting for the NFL season for a really long time, and I have to get your take about Eagles Patriots.
I'm excited. Who isn't? I mean, it's the start of the season. Hope springs eternal. There will be football every Sunday until February. Hopefully, our team will be playing it. We talked a little bit before the show about it, and
Yep,
it's hard to repeat. And, I'm a
it is.
fan. I'm gonna root for the team no matter what. But if you look at the statistics, it's challenging to get
Yep.
yourself back up. There's a lot of turnover with teams. Coaches leave, and we saw that this year. Saw two coaches leave. Last year, Jonathan Gannon here, I questioned the defense all season.
Oh yeah.
Kind of got yelled at by people for it. How can you be questioning things about a team that's winning? and playing so well. Same thing with special teams last
Right.
year, all year, and those are the
Right.
things in the Super Bowl that kind of cropped up. So I do have some concerns about the special teams, some injuries, some players that aren't there. Some new coaches. I think there's less turnover on the offensive side. Brian Johnson's been in the system. He's been with Jalen Hurts forever. And if there's ever the model of what you want in a QB, level-headed and leader, Jalen
It's
Hurts
Jalen
is that
Hurts.
guy.
Yeah.
So I mean, we'll see what the defense is under Sean Desai. Whether they, we in Philadelphia, we like a more aggressive defense. But I think in the end, we want to win. So if we blitz a little less but are more effective, I don't think fans will care in the end.
I'm curious to see what Matt Patricia's role is going to be. Like I I don't know if you know this, okay? And this is a whole story. I do not dislike the Eagles at all whatsoever. I just did not get into the NFL until I was in high school. And the whole
Okay.
story is that I was supposed to go to a Jewish youth group event, for BBYO. I'm sure that you've heard of BBYO.
Oh yeah.
Um, but anyhow, I was late to the event, and it was supposed to be I was supposed to go to the Eagles. It was an Eagles kickoff type of a game, or they had like a little house party, and so I was late because I had played practice, and it was Hell Week. That's like what we called it in theater and whatnot. But on Sunday, I go to this event. The game's over, and they're like, Jason, like we're gonna sit you down in front of this TV. We don't care what NFL game is coming on. You're just gonna sit on this couch right here, and you're just gonna watch this. You're just gonna watch this game because we're tired of you just talking about baseball and basketball. We want to get you into football. And then Shyme was like, okay, like
Okay.
whatever. And then, unfortunately for their sakes, I turned into a Patriots fan because I loved Rob
Oh.
Gronkowski.
Oh.
And
Did you like the pencil in the ear for Patricia and stuff? That was
yes.
look. I think that I think that there were questions coming in about his previous relationship with Darius Slay. They seem to have,
Sure.
have worked that out. I mean, Matt
Yes.
Patricia comes from the Bill Belichick coaching tree. He's been a
Yes, he
head
does.
coach. He brings experience. He's not necessarily a leader on that coaching staff in terms of a coordinator, but he brings leadership qualities. So if Nick Sirianni thinks that he's the guy that he needs on the staff, who am I at this point coming off of a Super Bowl to question whether he should be the guy? I mean,
For
I
sure.
guess we'll see how it all works out. But coaching matters, but players have to make plays,
Players have to
and
execute.
that's what we'll see
Absolutely.
on Sunday is when they come out, can they execute? What are the Patriots going to be? Their defense was excellent last year. Their offense was not, and they didn't. Mac Jones is still up there at quarterback, and so like I don't know. We'll
I know.
see. But I'm just excited for football to be back. Like
Me too.
my co-host jokes with me all the time because we do the show on Friday, and first thing I always ask him is, "Did you watch the Thursday night game?" And he hates Thursday night football, just because he thinks it's a bad product. He doesn't think that the best games end up because the players are tired or whatever reason.
Right.
I will watch organized ping pong if it's on TV. Like I have just always watched sports. Long before I had a sports radio show, my wife said I had to talk sports with somebody because I just watched so much sports.
Right.
So I love the fact that there's Thursday night for football. There's college football back. This is a great time of year. The Phillies are
It
coming down
is.
the stretch. Basketball and hockey will start. The Union are playing. I mean, it's like cornucopia over here of sports.
I cannot wait till Sunday because that's officially when the pumpkin spice coffee begins.
There you go.
That's
So that's
specifically
that's
when
your
it does.
official
Yes.
start. Because I've seen like stores putting it out in July when it
Oh,
was like
that's way
95
that's
degrees.
way too early.
Look,
You can't do that.
I can barely dress myself, so I'm not one to offer social commentary on when things should come out. Like I don't know when you're not supposed to wear white past, or like I wear a t-shirt and
Yeah.
a pair of comfortable shorts regularly, and my kids
That's how I
laugh when
am
I
too.
get dressed up. So, but I mean, it's a great time of year though. Like people,
It's
I always talk when we started the show of the impact that a team can have on a community. Like when the Phillies made their run last year, when the Eagles made their run last year, or even when the Sixers bowed out last year, the community goes up and down, based on the actions of their sports teams. People who aren't really fans necessarily will get into the fun of the fandom.
Sure.
That's what I think about so cool about sports. And then we
Yeah.
get to talk about it.
Which is the coolest thing in the entire
I
world for
agree with you.
sure. It is really cool. Listen, so I always like to ask this to all my guests, whether they are YouTube podcasters, whether they're radio personalities, or if they're on TV or whatever. But since this is called sharing the mic with JJ, okay, I always like to ask people like the one of the very first questions I like to ask is, um, tell me a moment, okay? And I know that you've been doing this for this show specifically for 7 years, but what would you say was like a favorite moment or a favorite memory of a time where you got to share the mic with somebody? It could be with one of your co-hosts, Jeff Cohen or Jeff Rutberger. It could be with like with one of your guests. Like I know that you just recently had um, Adam Adam Virant on.
Yeah.
For those of you that don't know, he's the director of the Savannah Bananas. He's the director of baseball operations for them. You also had Tim Brown, you had Ron Darling, and also Keith Pompey comes on. But what would you say was like a really cool moment that you got to share on the mic with somebody?
So I'll be honest, the first time I got to share the mic with anybody was cool to me. I grew up listening to sports radio with my dad. That was our thing. When we couldn't agree on life, we agreed on sports. We went to games, we watched games, we listened to sports talk. I listened to, the New York stations. I listened to the Philadelphia stations, and I got into sports on the radio side by accident. I came through the
Really?
political world. Yeah, my background's in
Yeah.
politics and campaigns. I traveled the country running
Yeah.
political campaigns. I spent 3 years living in Iowa.
I was going
It
to
was
ask you
great. I
about
got to
that.
go to Wrigley out there. I saw a game out in Milwaukee. I found the sports out in the Midwest, and I came back and so I used to do the political commentary. I would go on the political shows on 1210 PHT and other shows and play the Democrat to the Republican. And I used to joke because 1210 is the same station owned by WIP, and I'd be in
Yep.
there on Sunday night for this back and forth, and I'd be like, can I just go down to the sports show rather than doing the politics? So like the first time I got to share the mic with anybody was cool to me. That I was
That's so
able
cool.
to talk sports on the radio. It's like, wow, this is unbelievable. The moment where it became beyond real is when we were interviewing Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He has his Skyhook Foundation, and he was donating proceeds to kids to help them get educational support. And so he came on. So it was early on when we were doing the show. I remember it was like a February interview. We were in studio and we talked to him. We talked to him about Joel Embiid. We talked about his own career. We talked about John Wooden. Uh, and afterwards, I was just like, did I just talk to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar? Like that to me was crazy. And
Yeah.
I mean, now like people laugh, we had James Patterson and Mike Lupica on to talk about a book. My mother-in-law is not a huge sports fan, but when I had James Patterson on, she paid attention to that. They have like a nonfiction book where the family owns a sports team, a media empire basically, and the sports team is one of the parts of the media empire. And so we had them both on to talk. We had Kevin Bacon on the show to
Yep.
talk. Like, I mean, things that it, it's funny because you become a name dropper when you're not trying to. Like, you're just
Yeah.
talking about the fun conversations you have, and it's like, wow, we talked to that person. That's
Yeah.
cool.
No, absolutely. Now, my eyes lit up for a second because I was thinking of the name Mike Lupica, and I have a book, um, that I used to read. I read it like it was for like my summer reading when I was in seventh grade. It was called Heat Ball, I think.
Probably.
Yeah,
Uh,
and
I,
and
I
and it
can
was
see
written
if
by
that's
him.
his. Yeah, so he was a longtime reporter. He was on the Sports Reporters, and he and James Patterson. I mean, James Patterson's written over 100 books. He's one of the most successful writers that there is. That was one of the coolest things we did is we created a book club
That's so cool.
because there's so many different sports books out there. That's how we
Yes.
found Tim Brown, who you mentioned. His
Yep.
story is it's all about the backup catcher. It's basically Eric Kratz, who was a backup catcher for the Phillies for a little while, who we also ended up
Yep.
having on the show to talk about it. It's him leaving the game, his retirement, and is how it starts. And it's fascinating the knowledge that the backup catcher has. It focuses on the 21 hours that you're not playing the game each day for the backup catcher and how important the role is that they play, whether they're starting or not.
Yep.
Most times they won't see the field, but they're the glue guy. They're essential in the clubhouse. And so we get these guests from these books, and it's like, okay, this is pretty cool.
That is really cool. Guys, we're speaking to Jason Springer. He's the host of the Hardcore Sports Net, or sorry, he's the host of the Heart of Sports, and and this is our new episode of Sharing the Mic with JJ. We're just getting started with the whole conversation. So you went to Rutgers, right?
Yes.
And you graduated with a political science degree. So I know, and you talked about it a little bit, how you got to go to Iowa and how you got to work on Howard Dean's political campaign, and you got to do certain types of stuff with that. But what was that like transition like when you were going into politics, or when you were in politics and then you're transitioning into sports?
Well, I was always a sports fan, and so that never changed. And what you find is politicians use sports to help build their brand.
Yes.
You find that when you're running races. So, I was 22. I was just out of college. I had the opportunity to run races, and I lived in a town of 137 people. I'm from South Jersey. That doesn't exist around here.
Right.
So it was a great experience. I grew up. For me, the transition, it wasn't a transition. Life is about telling stories to me. And whether you're telling stories for politicians running for office, corporate businesses, nonprofit organizations, or talking sports, there's a story to be told. So I was always a communicator, and I like to help people tell stories. I mean, that's how I sold myself. I help people tell their story by telling stories. So for me, the transition to talking sports wasn't that hard because I knew I had always talked it anyway. I talked with my friends, I talked with strangers. For me, that was a way when I didn't know what else to say, I could talk about the game last night.
Yeah.
So, sports to me was always my comfort zone. When I was uncomfortable around other things, sports is where it was my wheelhouse. So the transition to talk sports on the radio, it was more just getting comfortable behind a microphone.
Yeah.
I always joked I'm a worker bee. I don't need a title. So to have my name on a radio show and be out there doing stuff, that's a little bit different for me.
Yeah. And I think that like what kind of ties everything in together is strategic communications and marketing and branding. And I've noticed that especially nowadays, you you have to be able to learn how to do all those types of things while you're also like on the air, because you can be having the greatest show in the world and you could be talking about some really cool stuff and having really cool conversations, but just the marketing side of stuff, like coming up with the keywords, spreading the word on social media, and just trying to really get more people to try to find the channel and try to connect with others. That's the one thing that I think a lot of people that are in this business now are trying to make that transition still, and it's hard because social media has really changed a lot of lives, but
Well, and it
um
keeps changing. That's the
and it
problem. Is
keeps
once
changing.
people learn something, I mean, I always joke when I started on. I do a lot of trainings in colleges. I know you went to Rowan. I'll speak again
Yes.
there in November. I go every year right before the election, and I talk about using digital media on political campaigns. And I always tell people not to pay attention to the name of the platform, but pay attention to the type of communication because the name will change. It used to be MySpace and Meetup, then it was
Yep.
Facebook, now it's TikTok, and then it'll be
Yep.
something else.
Yeah.
It's the type of communication, it's the connectivity, it's the social aspect of it as much as the media aspect of it. So that's what I always tell people when it comes to that.
I think that that's so important too. And I want you to talk a little bit about JRS Strategies, because I think that that's like a really good tie into this whole conversation. Um, so JRS Strategies, if I'm not mistaken, it just basically is an organization that's out there that helps other people that are interested in getting involved with digital media and digital marketing help navigate their way through that sort of business. What got you interested in starting that?
When I was on Howard Dean's presidential campaign, it was my second year in Iowa. I'm from Jersey. I drove back 2 weeks after my first year. I remember it was Valentine's Day that I drove across the country, and I got there,
Wow.
and there was already 100 people that were organizing themselves through Meetup. And you're talking 2003 at this point. This is not when social media is really big, and they were running a political blog, and so people around the country would write at night, and there was, I'm 23 in the middle of a cornfield, so I used to say, hey, what's up, I'm from Jersey. I met somebody that ended up starting a New Jersey political blog with online through that. So for me, it was the life experience of realizing what technology could do to assist in bringing people together and then sharing information. When I worked at a law firm years later, I had gotten out of politics a little bit, and my boss used to say, like, what are you going to do with this? And it's around 2008, the social media, because I would train lawyers, and it's like, this will be a career at some point. So, when I went out full time in 2012, thought I would do more politics, and then it became politics and corporate and nonprofit, and now it's anybody who wants to tell a story on any platform. So it's making sure that your brand is carried across wherever you are. So I mean, you even look at the way that you're doing this show; it's all branded for sharing the mic with JJ. It carries
Yep.
that through when you share it. Like those are the important things that you do. That everything matches up and is consistent, so that the person who sees it can over and over get that repetition of who you are, what you do, where you do it.
Absolutely. And storytelling, I think, is something that is not only like valid when it comes to sports, but I think that it's also something that is a very powerful weapon that helps people escape from, like their everyday chores, like everyday lives. And I think that that's what is just so valuable in this
I
world.
use it to
And
learn. I mean,
yeah,
I
yeah,
follow other reporters and athletes. I get real time information. I always joke with people that when MSNBC goes into reruns of Lock Up New Mexico, social media goes into overdrive. There are stories that break overnight that are told by the time the news comes back on in the morning. And so social media is a
24/7.
real time conversation of what is going on at any moment. Now, does it always reflect the comments and the values that everybody would like? No. And that's very concerning for
Yes.
lots of people. But it does allow for that real time communication that we didn't always have.
Yeah, absolutely. So now I want to transfer into I want to transfer into the whole heart of sports. Okay, so how did that come about, and whose idea was it, and how has it led into what it is now today?
So originally, it was a show on Sunday that Jeff Rutberg was looking for a co-host, and I had always wanted to do a show. I had the idea to want to tell this story, and Jeff wanted to tell a story, and so the two of us came together. My father-in-law actually introduced us, and we started doing
Oh
a
yeah,
show. And if you go back to some of those early shows, you can hear it was my first time doing a sports radio show. There were a
wow,
lot of ums and uhs and
just like what I'm doing.
breaks, and I mean all those things that now
Yeah,
as you do it, you try to catch yourself and you just speak through it. But it's challenging, and so
it is.
listening back, it's always funny some of those earlier shows. And at some point,
Right.
Jeff decided that he kind of wanted to do a little bit less, and he had brought in a guest, Jeff Cohen, who we taught, as I say, there for a transition, and but you notice it at this point now. I've been doing it so long that when I
I've
say it,
I've
it's
been
like,
doing it too.
oh, what am I
Filler
doing?
words and filler phrases are a
Yeah.
worst nightmare, especially when you notice it. you
So
know,
Jeff
I get it.
Cohen came in to talk about copyrights and trademarks when the Vegas Golden Knights did not copyright their name, and they were being challenged by the Army Black Knights or the Golden Knight their jumpers. The
Oh my
parachuters are called the
gosh.
Golden Knights, and there was another team that
Right.
was challenging it. I had known Jeff because he was at the law firm that I had worked at. We didn't realize we had sports in common. He started coming on as sort of a regular third host when Ryan moved on. And then Jeff Cohen and I took over the show. We still wanted to do a show that told the story behind the sports. We wanted to have athletes. We wanted to have executives. We wanted to have writers. But we also wanted to have people that were in the community service side of things. So we
Yep.
partnered with Covenant House, and we've slept out a couple times to raise awareness for homelessness and raised, my God, I think we raised $10,000 last year, just the two of us,
Oh my
from
gosh.
our sleep out. We've done stuff with Coaches versus Cancer, where the Philly Coaches versus Cancer chapter, we've interviewed all the City 6 coaches around some of the
Yep.
stuff that they've done there. We've worked with the NFL Alumni Association and MLB Umps Cares. So for us, we can have as much fun breaking down the game on Sunday as we can talking about what it means and who was impacted on Monday. And that
Absolutely.
was the idea behind the show. And the station liked it. At the time, it was 610 ESPN. Eventually, they had sold that station, and so they moved us to WWDB. And we ended up moving from Sundays to Saturdays to Fridays. And so now we air live every Friday at 4 p.m. And, before my dad passed away, I used to joke with him, like, do you believe I'm in drive time in Philadelphia on the radio? It's crazy to me. The kid who
Yeah.
wanted to call in, years ago, I
I would
called
lie about
in.
his age. That's so
Well,
crazy to
so the
me.
funny thing is, where sports and politics cross. So when the Eagles drafted Mike Mamula, I called in and I wanted them to take Warren Sapp, and I was
Really?
adamantly against Mike Mamula. And years later, I was working for a state senator as his communications director, and we were at an event in Washington Township, and Mike Mamula was the grand marshal for the event.
Are you kidding
And
me?
he was so nice, and I went over and I talked to him, and we're joking. And at one point, I said, "I have a confession to make." And he said, "What?" And I said, when you were drafted, I called and said that I did not want the Eagles to take you." He goes, "I have a confession too." I said, "What?" He goes, "You weren't the only one." And so we had a good laugh about
Really?
it, and he was a really good sport about it. But it just reminded me how long I had wanted to be talking sports. I'd
Yeah.
wanted to talk sports since I wasn't tall enough to play the sports that I was playing.
Right.
And then it came full circle where somebody put a microphone in my hand and said, "Here, go for it."
I think that you also brought up a really good point earlier too about just getting reps, because I've been told by so many people that I've met and that I've networked with just over the years that no matter if it's broadcasting, if it's interviewing, if it's podcasting, or if it's just hosting your own radio show or producing or whatever it is, even behind the scenes, the only way that you get better at something is if you do it over and over and over again.
I
And
got hired for my
yes,
first job to run that political campaign. They called me on a Saturday night 3 weeks before I was graduating college. And I said, "Oh, I'm just about to head out. I was going to the bar with friends. I'm a senior. It's okay to go to the bar on a Saturday night." And I said, "Can I
sure.
call you Monday?" And they said, "Yeah, we just have one question." And I said, "Okay." They said, "What do you think of failure?" And at that point, I had left school for a semester to figure out what I was going to do with my life. I had failed plenty of times, and not thinking, I said, "Oh, failure's not a bad thing. Just learn from your mistakes." And he goes, "You're hired." I go, "For what?" He said, "Call me on Monday." And that was how I got my first campaign to manage, by
Wow.
realizing that getting experience and screwing up and learning how to do it right would be the best way for me to build myself and my brand. And I try to follow that. Nobody wants to fail. Nobody wants to go through anything failing. You don't want to embarrass yourself. But you learn some of the best things when you don't succeed, when you don't get that job, but you've practiced for it, when you don't get, when the interview doesn't go well. Like you know how it is. You prep so much for an interview, and if it doesn't go well, you're beating yourself up, and it's like, what did I do wrong? And it may not be you. It may have been technology. It may have been the other person. It may have been you.
Yep.
So that's the only way to do it. Is, before we were recording this, we had all kinds of technology problems. For all the years we've been doing, both of us have been doing stuff. We've produced live things, we've put things
Yes.
out, and yet I
Oh yeah.
can't plug a microphone into my computer to have a conversation with you. So the more things that you try and do, the more you figure out how to work through it and figure out that you can do it, which is
Yes,
ultimately what makes people successful is confidence in yourself. Am
absolutely.
I 6'5" that I can play basketball? Nope.
Nope.
Did we try out for the G League Bluecoats? Absolutely. Are they still laughing at my attempt to dribble through my legs? Yes, definitely. I was there for
I used to
comic
work for the
relief.
Blue
I
Coats,
know
so
you did. We did a show for the Bluecoats for a couple years. We did a minor league show for the Phillies,
really,
High Hopes Phillies minor league rundown, and
yep,
the Regiment for a season with the Bluecoats, where we interviewed some of their players and went and covered the games. We interviewed Larry Milai and Alex
yep,
Yo and all the guys
oh
there.
yeah,
And
yep.
and they invited us to try out. Jeff got dunked on. I couldn't dribble through my legs,
Oh
but
my
it
gosh,
it gives you a new appreciation for what these athletes are going through when we watch what they're doing with the open tryout and what they
yep,
do in terms of how they run their plays. And I don't get behind a mic and claim to have ever been in a huddle. Okay, I was not blessed with
yep,
that athletic skill, height, talent, anything. But I've
right.
watched enough games in my life that I can sure BS about it with somebody for a couple hours.
Of course. It's funny. I have to bring this up. Shout out to Alex Yo. Shout out to everybody from the Blue Coats. Matt Murphy, D. Lynam, all
Matt
those
Murphy
people.
doing his thing with the Sixers now. Like
Yes,
that's
he
the thing.
is.
You talk
Yes, he
about
is.
taking and trying different things. It's also the
Yep.
people that you meet along the way. I mean, you and I
Oh
met
yeah.
7 years ago when you came in studio and now you're asking me to come on your show. Like that's when things go full circle. The people that
Yes.
you meet at your internship for the Bluecoats will be the people that are the voices in the league and that are doing things as it goes forward.
That's so crazy. That's so crazy because you're absolutely right. And I wanted to kind of piggyback off of the whole failure conversation because I think that that's so valuable because I always like to tell people that going from a 1.8 GPA, cumulative GPA to a 3.3, like that's not just numbers. Stats just don't lie, but they also like don't tell the full truth either. So I always tell people, okay, like yeah, you see that 3.3, but you don't know I had a 1.8, and like how did that whole thing change? It was because I had to change my game plan. I had to come up with different strategies in order for me to succeed. So that meant not only just getting involved more with the classroom, but also doing things outside of the classroom and hanging out with people at the radio station, staying those extra hours.
I have a
And
I have a
yeah,
deal with my parents that I don't talk about my GPA where it ended up at.
oh, really?
I was not what you would call the best student. I thought I was going to be an engineer. I had 9 declared
Yeah.
majors in college. I
Really?
I ended up as a poli science major and a psych minor, but
Right.
that was only because those were the things that I had the most credits in. I had no
That's
idea what I wanted to do, where I
that's
wanted to
wild.
go, and how I wanted to get there. I just
Right.
tried a bunch of stuff until something worked, and I figured out that I could help people to tell a story better
Absolutely.
than anything else. And so that's the direction I went.
Absolutely. And just to tie it all back together, just like you said, it's learning from the failure. And I actually got really lucky because I probably would have graduated in 2020 and it would have been just with a radio TV film major and I would have been thrown into the fire, of trying to just get into this field during the pandemic.
Oh,
And it would have been so tough, but because I stayed and because I was trying to get my GPA up, I changed my major and the timing was so perfect because they eventually had a, sports communication and media major, and I said, I have to just wait this out. Like, let me get my GPA up and let me see how this major unfolds. And if it's only going to take me an extra year and a half, that's going to be worth it. And that's how I was lucky because I also got the partnerships with the Delaware Bluecoats and with the Wilmington Blue Rocks, and I took advantage of those opportunities. And even though like those opportunities came, you have to try out. Like you have to be able to put yourself out there and take advantage of those opportunities and earn those. And it just goes to show like what I'm doing right now. And it's a whole domino effect because if you don't take those opportunities and if you don't fail and if you don't accept the failure, succeeding is going to be that much harder. But like once you do go through that whole transition, it is just so rewarding. And
Yeah,
I
you
don't think,
appreciate the success so
and
much
you
more.
appreciate, right? Exactly.
It,
Exactly.
it's
So,
it, we talk to people a lot about the journey because
yes,
it's the journey that's interesting. It's not all
absolutely.
the way up. There's ups and downs, there's setbacks, and you jump forward. You think you're there, but it's another way you have to go. The
We're
journey,
human.
yeah, everybody's journey is different.
Yep.
And, I always, when we talk about it, we try not to judge people. I never question whether an athlete quit. I don't, because I don't know what led to the actions. I can question what I saw on the floor, but
On
I
the
don't I
floor.
don't question their motives because you don't know what's going on with them.
Right.
But everybody does their own show a different type of way.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I do have a few more questions to ask you. Before we wrap this thing up. First of all, if you guys are just tuning in, this is another episode of Sharing the Mic with JJ. We got the awesome Jason Springer on, host of the Heart of Sports and also founder, also of the JRS Strategies organization. So, Jason, I bring this up to a lot of my guests because I think that it's really important to try to have these sort of conversations too, because the people that tune into my show or people that tune into just the games that I do, they don't understand how, because it's not a 9 to 5 job, that you have to be able to find your own structure. So, how do you find structure in your life when you're trying to balance, work in regards to just doing sports and then just family?
I start prepping for the show a week later after the last show ends. I open a Google Doc and I put stuff in there all week long, and then I look where it is Thursday night. And I say, okay, this is what I want more of. Or we find out that we're going to have a guest, and it's like, okay, I
Yep.
need more prep with this. But
Right.
generally, it's become a part of my work-life balance. It's another job that I have. I have a
Sure.
job as a radio host. I have a job as a communications consultant. I have a job as a dad and a husband, and you figure out how they all balance and work out. But for me, I just kind of go all week long. I don't let it go till the end. So as I see things, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I want to talk about that. Or I'll be watching a game and I'll text my co-host and we'll go back and forth on something. And it's like, let's talk about this more on the show.
Right.
So that's generally the process. It's ongoing. My wife hates it
Yes.
actually. I think because like I'll
Does
say to
she?
her, "What do you think of this?" And she'll be like, "Talk to Jeff." Like she doesn't want to. She doesn't want to talk to me about it. She's like, "Go talk on the radio."
That's so funny. I listen to a lot of Hunter Brody, on
Yeah.
Sports Talk with Broads. He also went to Rowan. And I've never like talked to him before. Like I've definitely like reached out to him, but he was one of those people that actually I saw on my YouTube channel like before he even reached 1,000 subscribers. And I learned from him just how to talk about passion and how to not just be a reporter, but also to have a personality. And I bring him up because he always talks about, his wife Kara, how sometimes, he'll be like in front of the TV, he'll be screaming, and Kara will be like upstairs sleeping.
It's the Eagles Super Bowl. So my son Brandon was born the year before the Eagles won the Super Bowl,
Right.
and for that Super Bowl, it was New England against Atlanta, and he's 1 day old, and I'm holding him in the hospital. My wife's sleeping, and we're watching the game on TV, and I'm saying to him like, "You're an Eagles fan. Sorry, your team won't really play in this very much." And so the next year, his first birthday was the day that the Eagles played in and won the Super Bowl, but he went to bed kind of early.
Oh
So
boy.
my
Oh
in-laws were
boy.
still here, and my wife was here, and we're watching the Super Bowl, and I'm jumping up and down, and my wife says to me, "If you wake him, he's yours." And so I'm jumping up and down, screaming, covering my mouth as I'm doing this celebration. My mother-in-law saw a totally different side of me as a sports fan when we watched the Eagles win the Super Bowl while my son was sleeping upstairs and I was trying not to wake him. So,
Yeah.
yes.
That must have
So
been so hard.
it was
That must have
very
been so
challenging.
hard.
It was very, very challenging. He did not wake up.
Gosh.
I did have to go
That's good.
outside at some point,
Oh
but it
yes.
was
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
Look, sports. I love the passion of sports. Sometimes it goes
Yep.
too far, yes, but I love the passion that people have around something. They can get so bought
Absolutely.
into it and kind of escape whatever else is going on that they're worrying about to just enjoy that moment. I'm really big on, being in that moment and being at the game and enjoying the people you're at the game with.
Absolutely. Look, Jason, before I let you go, I always like to end on this question because there are people that are out there that are always watching that want to get more involved with just media and also with sports media and sports broadcasting, sports journalism, and that type of stuff. What would you say was like one of the best learning lessons that you've learned just throughout this journey that you can spread to other people who just like wouldn't understand, who are diving into this field that wouldn't necessarily understand those types of things, if that makes any sort of sense whatsoever?
The biggest reason that people don't help someone when they're asked is because they're told, nobody asked me. Don't be afraid to be told no. Just go and ask. The worst that happens is when you're in the same position that you were before you asked, you're just a little disappointed. You still don't have anything. So, ask for mentors, ask for opportunities. Don't ask somebody to pay you right away. Offer your time. Look, I did a bunch of internships. I volunteered. I still volunteer my time. I've been a professional for 30 years and I still volunteer at different places because one, it's the right thing to do. Two, the relationship that you make while you're there. Something else to talk about with people. So put yourself out there, and don't be afraid to hear no. No means ask me again when you have more information about me. That's the way
Right.
I've always treated it. And if you can not be disappointed by no, you'll push through and get the opportunities you deserve. Somebody will say yes just because you asked.
Yep. And I think it's really funny that you also bring that up too, because being a team player is such an important thing in this field as well. Just being able to be a sponge. When I first got my internship with the Wilmington Blue Rocks, of course, like I wanted to, be on the air, but I had an opportunity where we had an engineer. This was actually before like our extended partnership that we had with them. But we had a producer that would do like all 120 games, and then one year it would just be 60 and 60 between two producers, and one time both of them couldn't do it, and they asked somebody in the Rowan radio chat if somebody else could fill in, and I said sure, like I'd be really interested in helping out, and I became like a part-time radio producer and a radio engineer, and then that eventually led to the extended partnership with everything else, and then I wasn't just broadcasting. I actually wasn't even broadcasting my first year, but I was producing more games. I was cutting more highlights. I was filling in for color commentators like at the game if they couldn't come and do it. And then I got more involved with playing foul ball music. Every time they always asked a question in the chat, can somebody do this? Can somebody do that? I learned that just from the whole college experience, I'm partnered with a minor league team. And how many people can say that they can do that even before they're 30? So you have to be able to take advantage of so many opportunities. And if somebody needs you out in left field, you go play left field. If somebody needs you out in right field, you play right. Oh, you need me to be a pitcher today? Okay, I'll be a pitcher today.
And
So,
people will see that you're willing to do all those things. You don't have to go
correct.
tell everybody that you're doing it. They see that.
Right.
They know that you're the team player that's there when they need somebody. They know you're the
Right.
reliable guy, and when they need somebody, they'll turn to you.
And I think that somebody, the person that was in charge of my program, he commented in the chat like one time, like when I took advantage of something, he was like, "See, like this is like what you have to do, like in order to get jobs. Jobs want to see those types of things." And I literally replied back and I said, "I'm not really doing it for jobs though. Like I'm doing it just because I care."
Well,
And I think that there's a
the best
difference.
things do both. They look
Yes.
good and they are good. Those are
Right.
the best opportunities. Like, I'm not. We don't do the Covenant sleep out to get headlines. Like, we do a radio show regardless. We do it because we
Right.
use our platform to help other people. There's good things that come out of doing it. So when you say yes, when you give yourself the opportunity, when somebody else gives you the chance, you never know where it leads to next time.
Absolutely. Jason, thank you so much for coming on here. You're the best. It really means a
Anytime.
lot to me that you did
Anytime. This
this.
was a blast. I love following your journey. Like we talk about journeys. your own has been a fun one. So I can't wait to see where you go next, and I look forward to keep following it.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. You're the best. All right, guys, that's going to wrap things up for this episode of Sharing the Mic with JJ. I'm Jason Joseph. He's Jason Springer. Make sure that you tune in to the Heart of Sports on Sunday
Fridays
afternoons.
now. We're
Oh,
Fridays now at
oh,
four
yes, yes,
o'clock.
yes. Fridays. Yes, yes, yes. Totally. I totally
Or
slipped
you
up
can
on
or you
that.
can listen anytime on the podcast too. So you can listen on Sunday if you want. Anytime you want to download it, you can listen afterwards.
Perfect. Awesome. I'm going to drop the link down below in the description too so that people can follow it as well. But you guys are the best. I love you all so much. Have a great rest of your Friday.